find it funny how I just defended Dapperton and now I'm covering him. Life can just be funny like that sometimes. So this video is going to be a multi-layer shit show. That being said, parts of the video will drag out, so I apologize, but there's not much I can do outside of speeding it up. So this is Dapperton's response video to Next Wussman's response to him. Now let me just state that I'm actually a fan of Mr. Dapperton and I enjoy his videos for the most part. So I'm not doing this video out of anger or spite. So let's get started.
There's this guy named NextGW's, man, and he made a commentary against me, and he hid it from me on purpose by not including my name in the description box of the video, in the title, or in the tags.
He does this with all his commentaries, though. We have no clue if his reasons for not including your name was to prevent your fans from giving him a hard time. Really, there's a lot of possibilities here.
And once I did find it, and, I just gave him some criticisms, pointing out some of his flaws, and he started talking mad trash on Twitter and YouTube.
Cutting you off here because I have one, honestly minor thing to say. These small stutters get annoying after a while. They're difficult to notice, but it takes very little time to cut out in Audacity or whatever video editor you're using.
If you go and brainlessly do that, you're giving Dapperton more of a disloyal and insulting fuck you than anything that's about to come out of my mouth. Once again, I'm saying this so you fans of his don't look bad, because going against Dapperton's wishes doesn't make you look right here. Okay, we good? Great, post-production spiel done. Hey guys, have I got a perfect commentary set up for you? Okay, wait, let's start from the beginning. You guys remembered when I covered that one Satirtician video a while back? You know, the one about Lacey Green, which got guest featured by Dapperton. Well, let's just say I heard there was a video of his that got commentated on. This was a commentary where I saw it and thought, yeah, I'd rip into this if he wasn't gonna. So imagine my surprise when I saw that it came out and Dapperton made a response to it. Because, the way I see it, if there's one person that ought to cover this response, it's someone that's well versed on things like this. Let's go.
Actually, keep this bit of lingering footage in mind. It's actually going to be important for later.
Whoa, wait a minute. I thought I was watching Dapperton's video, not the commentary Oh, it is his video! Alright, I need to get this off my chest. The editing is remarkably unpolished. I know this seems like a nitpick, but if you know me, I'm all for cohesive editing, because it can really show how much you cared about making the video.
Did you ever notice that, Dapperton's editing seems to be very good on all his other videos, except his older videos, but his newer videos seem to be on par, but for some reason this video with Loudon, the editing just sucks. It's because when Loudon added himself into the footage, he screwed up the transitioning. He screwed up the transition in and the transition out every time he inserted himself in the footage. So that means when you see him pop in, you're going to see the footage mess up. Also, when he pops out, you're going to see the footage mess up. I don't appreciate you blaming me for Loudon's bad editing.
First, the intro or lack thereof. Honestly, it's kinda baffling to just drop your audience into the video you're discussing without any warning at all. The audience is just left to pick up context throughout the video, and it's a little difficult to get engaged if you're stuck catching up on what it's even about.
What are you talking about? People know what the video's about before they even click on it because of the title. Not only that, you don't need an intro to explain context. You could use your words to explain context in the beginning, which I do every video. Then I go from there. I don't need an intro. There's nothing that an intro can do that I can't do with my words.
That still doesn't change the fact that throwing us into the video like that is confusing at first. Also, that ignores the fact that using an introduction is far easier than making your fans pick up context throughout the video. It doesn't even have to be a long one. It could just be, this is Loudon's response to me, let's watch. And the title just gives you the basic idea. The title of your response to Loudon is racism the worst crime ever? Which doesn't really show who or what you're covering. All it just says is that you're going to be talking about racism. Basically, throwing us into the video without context leaves us with unanswered questions. Who are you covering? What type of video are you doing? What's the topic? When will Lunatic the Game remember to check over my scripts? So, intros are kinda necessary.
It's like being on a bus you're driving, you change course, and you don't tell me where you're driving. I'd be concerned at the least. Second, there is no skipping or speeding up the original footage in this video in any way. Whenever there's footage Dapperton doesn't have anything to say about, and there's plenty of that, he just leaves that shit in. Mind you, this is done while disregarding how it leaves the video at a sluggish pace with a lot of footage that's extraneous to his counterpoints.
What are you talking about? If I don't respond within 20 seconds, that footage gets chucked. Everybody knows how much footage I cut out. Let's say there's a 20-minute long video that I'm responding to. Usually I'll cut out half the footage, so I'll make it 10 minutes long, and then I'll respond with my 10 minutes of footage, so the video will be 20 minutes long. That's about average. Usually my videos end up being as long as the original footage, but that means I had to cut out a lot of the original footage because I had to add my own footage within. Basically, I cut out half the footage. So your claim is full of shit, again.
How about that over a minute of lingering footage you had like 3 minutes ago? Yeah, I ain't buying that shit.
And if you're worried that cutting out original footage might make it look like you're leaving something out that's important, then just say what you're skipping over. It's not that difficult. I've done it while Bane posting.
Please don't give me tips on how to YouTube, okay? I've been doing it longer than you, and I got more subs than you. I literally got 200 times more subs than you. So, just shut up.
Oh goody, I have more subs than you, therefore I'm right, you're wrong. Gwiss's sub count does not debunk any of his arguments he has to make. Also, no, Gwiss has been making videos longer than you, so going by your own logic, you're not allowed to be telling him what to do. Oh, the irony.
If you misspeak about what's going on, someone can see the original video in the description and check if you're bullshitting them. Third, and I should explain this, there's something I call lingering footage. You see this here? Where he just leaves in a good number of frames or half a second whenever he splices into the video, and it looks like there's a leftover frame or two that blinks on screen when it clearly wasn't supposed to.
Okay, for one, that's called the fade-in effect. Okay, it's a feature that you could do on Sony Vegas. Okay, it's a special effect. Some people think it looks cool. And I find it funny that you're trying to say we're lazy editors because we put in the extra effort to put in a special effect. Yeah, you may not like the special effect, but it doesn't make us lazy. And thirdly, that was from Loudon's edit, the guy who did the commentary on me. He's the one who freaking did that transition fade-in effect. Go take a look at any of my recent videos. You won't see these problems existing. But if you go look at all of Loudon's videos, these problems are prevalent in all of them. In every one of his videos. Yeah, it was Loudon who did this. Did you not notice that Loudon's avatar disappears half the time? Yeah, he's bad at editing, okay? Yeah, it annoys me too, but it's not me who did it. I mean, I don't understand how... I feel like you're being dishonest. I feel like you know it was Loudon who did the lousy editing. I mean, again, his avatar was disappearing half the time, and my avatar stayed there the whole time. Obviously, the bad editing came from Loudon, yet you blame me dishonestly.
I'll admit, you're correct about Gwiss being wrong about you blaming you for the lazy editing. However, you're treating it like it's intentional, when we don't know for a fact if it's intentional, so you're really not making yourself look any better than Gwiss is here.
I'd even go as far as to say racist and racism, for the most part, is mostly harmless. There's enough moral people out there to keep these racists from getting government power, so they cannot get slavery to come back. They cannot get any racist laws implemented. All they can literally do is walk around and say harmless, mean slurs at people.
What about the ones that go beyond just mean and hurtful words and start getting physical against someone who is a different color?
Look, if a racist gets physical against you in the United States of America, you are literally allowed to kill them if they threaten your life.
You mean stand your ground practices, right? Because there's something you didn't mention about that. A duty to retreat. In at least 17 states in the US, you're legally required to employ non-lethal means of self-defense unless you have no choice but using deadly force. And even then, you have some states in which standing your ground only applies to places like your home or your property, such as an office. That is castle doctrine, and you have a duty to retreat if you're not in a place that's yours in such states. Basically, in some states, no, you are not allowed to kill in self-defense right off the bat. Kinda misleading to graze over that.
Wait, that's the best you got? 17 states you can't defend yourself with deadly force? 17 states isn't a lot. There's like 50 states, bud. The vast majority of states you can defend yourself using violent force. So what are you talking about? What's even your point? In most situations, I'm absolutely right. So who cares about this small minority of situations where it's not true?
Okay, but what about the people in those 17 states that can't stand their ground? Sure, the majority can, but it's still a problem since the minority aren't allowed to defend themselves.
Well, let's just say in that small minority of situations where I'm wrong. Well, guess what? You could call the police and arrest the person that is trying to hurt you. You know, the racist guy that's trying to hurt you just because they don't like your skin color. And they'll use deadly force if they have to. Point is, it's against their interest because they'll get criminalized. They'll get hurt. And they could end up dead if they try to hurt you because they don't like your skin color. The worst thing that a racist could do to you without consequence is say mean words at you.
That still won't stop people from committing the crime. There wouldn't be so many murders if it actually stopped people from breaking the laws.
So, This is going to be a video where he looks at the global issues half full. Okay.
Did you see how Loudon disappeared? See, the bad editing's obviously coming from him. Now watch him transition out. There's more bad editing. Obviously the bad editing's coming from him.
Actually, Loudon disappearing there for a second was more for an effect rather than just bad editing.
Go around saying hurtful words to people, nobody gives a fuck because they are just words. And everyone knows words, for the most part, are harmless.
Until you put power behind those said words, and then that's where it starts to get heated. Also, assuming everyone is going to not care whenever a racial slur or a hurtful word is being said is a pretty bold statement to make.
Actually, the bold statement I'm making is that you're a pussy if it does hurt you. If you are a healthy person with a healthy brain, words shouldn't hurt you at all. I understand if you're depressed or you want to kill yourself, then you're not a mentally healthy person, and I can understand where you're coming from. But most people are mentally healthy people, and they could withstand mean, hurtful words.
Hold on. I've been meaning to ask you something. Dapperton, can I have you look through some randomly generated numbers so you can tell me if you see any problems? It's a weird request, I know, but it shouldn't take long. Does this set of 4 numbers seem fine to you? Like, I want to use this as a passcode for part of a big building in a...
Oh my god, that's 9/11! Oh, that hurts me so much! Oh, you're destroying me! G-Man! G-Man, you're destroying me! Why did you do that? No, I'm just kidding. That's... Who gives a fuck? Who gives a fuck?
Just because it doesn't hurt your feelings, that doesn't mean it won't hurt another person's feelings. For example, if someone called me a nigger, I wouldn't get hurt, since I'm a white kid living in a primarily white town. If I was black, however, I'd be pretty hurt. My point is, there's a lot of people who lost close family members there. They lost their aunts, uncles, brothers, sisters, mothers, cousins, boyfriends, girlfriends, wives, husbands, and some people even lost their kids. Now, I have no problem with making 9/11 jokes myself, but just know your audience. Tangent aside, you can't act like if something doesn't hurt your feelings, it won't hurt anyone else's feelings.
Look, I get what you're saying. Oh, words could offend people. I'm not saying words can't offend people. I'm saying that words shouldn't offend people as much as the left claim they do. If you're a mentally healthy person, words won't drive you to suicide. Mean words will never do that. If you're depressed and you have image problems, yeah, I can see how words can hurt you. But if you're a mentally healthy person, you should be fine. The majority of the time, people should be fine from mean words. I mean, how can you come up to me with a straight face and say that racism is as alive as it was 50 years ago, when the racists today, the worst thing they could do to you is just say mean words to you? That's it. You gotta be freaking kidding me. You're losing this argument.
What? You're giving me a mean look, and I don't know what you're looking all mad about.
So that's your point, huh? It makes you mad. It can make you mad. Who cares if racists could make you mad? Okay? That's the worst thing they could do. Alright? It's not that bad. It's not that big of a deal. Okay? We're not oppressed by racists like we were back in the day, which was my point.
I won't even try to argue that racism is as big a deal as it was back then. However, there's more than just saying mean words. Like we just got done talking about, racists can still hit and kill black people. Granted, there are consequences, but to say the worst they can do is say mean words is a pretty bold statement to make.
And second, you're surprised that people are uptight when you say something touchy like that? Alright, I'll elaborate since it looks like you couldn't figure out what the deal is with saying stuff like that homicide stat. Because I always saw a problem with blurting out that tidbit myself, but I couldn't quite put my finger on why. And that's when it hit me. It's not the what of that stat because the logistics and data seem to check out. It's the why. Why is it so, and why bring it up? Why this statistic is the case, for example, is pretty goddamn tricky to analyze. Think about how many questions you could ask here. What social issues are associated with ups and downs in homicide rates? Are there any underlying conflicts that could explain homicide trends? Is poverty a factor that plays a role in this? These are all good questions to ask after hearing that stat, and none of them are given answers when you just go and puke it up on my shirt. Hell, to add insult to injury, even that one factor with poverty rates is tricky to look at. When one of the articles you mentioned brought up poverty playing a role, they then said how research on that was contradictory and therefore inconclusive.
What the hell are you talking about? I never brought up poverty. I never brought up that stat from that article. So why are you bringing it up acting like that's a point I made? It's not. Debunk me. Debunk the shit I'm actually saying, you piece of shit.
Gwis said that poverty could be a reason behind the stat. What if black people are going out and doing all these crimes just to feed their families? So instead of debunking him, you're kind of strengthening his point. Wait, there's another 10 more minutes of this shit?
So it's got a lot to question, it's difficult to analyze, and you disregard all of that. I'd seem more tactful if I said something about 77 cents on the dollar without any background info. Oh, and funny story, while I was scripting, I saw a video by the one and only Based Mom, where she had something similar to say about gender trends. Sommer's advised to proceed with caution, and don't jump to conclusions on the matter. See what I mean? And then there's why you might mention it. Tell me, what do you think people would make of your intentions if you just shared this fun fact out of the blue?
Are you trying to insinuate that blurting out facts is racist? Does facts offend you now? I don't care about offending you. How many times do I have to tell you this?
Would they think you're going, huh, interesting, or trying to insinuate something more sinister?
Okay, I brought up the fact that Muslims got discriminated against. I didn't feel I needed to elaborate why they get discriminated against. Because of terrorism, it's obvious.
Actually, you do need to elaborate on why these people get discriminated on against, as it will leave people who are unaware of American history in the dark, wondering what the hell you're talking about.
Why do gun owners get discriminated against? Because of mass shooters. We already know this. What my audience may not know is why people would ever discriminate against a black person. It's because they're statistically more violent. That's it. And I knew, as soon as I started this video, that you were a left-winger and that you couldn't resist trying to paint me as racist. And that's exactly what you did in this video. So freaking stereotypical.
When did he even say this? Never once in the video did he say, "You're a racist piece of shit." Because he never said that. He's just criticizing the reasons behind your opinion rather than your opinion itself.
Also, some people say, well, being racist is worse than discrimination against religions, gun owners, because blacks went through slavery over 100 years ago. When a Jew gets called a Jew as a slur in a way that makes reference to when they were slaughtered back in the Holocaust, no one bats an eye. But when black people get called nigga, or, the N-word with a hard R, by a person of the wrong race, suddenly it's the end of the world.
This is going to be a long one. Okay, before I get to the N-word part, let me just say that the idea that people ignore Jews whenever they're mentioned in a negative light by someone who's a bigot is again bold to say, since if no one bats an eye to them, why do people on the anniversary of the Holocaust pay their respects to those who lost their lives?
Yeah, only a minority of people do that, so you're talking about the minority. The majority of people won't give a shit.
Whoa, hold it right there. So let's just ignore that there's a day of the year dedicated to Holocaust Remembrance.
Which I didn't even know of, by the way. Nor does anybody in my family know of, or my friends, and none of us celebrate it, so I don't think anybody really celebrates this as much as you're saying they do. But go ahead, go on.
Let's focus on the US specifically, shall we? You know how small of a minority it is for people to show remembrance to the Holocaust? It's so little that there's an entire museum dedicated to it in the DC National Mall.
A mall museum? That's your defense. Okay, everybody knows that. Nobody cares when you discriminate against Jews, okay? Everybody knows that. And then everybody knows that people care deeply if you discriminate against black people. But you claim that they're equal based on the fact that there's a freaking mall with the Holocaust Museum in it. Wow.
You're really gonna write this off like no one gives a shit when there's enough federal support and revenue from admissions to keep that museum going?
Okay, imagine I'm in a restaurant, right? If I screamed out, "Dirty Jew," I might get 1 or 2 looks. But if I screamed out the N-word with the hard R, everybody would be looking at me, and I would be kicked out within seconds, guaranteed.
That's because of how severe the word is. I'm pretty sure more people will give you weird looks if you screamed out, "Go Hitler!" in a restaurant instead of saying nigger.
That's because to the public, blacks are bigger victims, because slavery in the eyes of Americans is a bigger deal than what happened to the Jews during the Holocaust. Even though what happened to the Jews during the Holocaust is arguably worse, because death is worse than slavery. Being gassed to death is way worse than being enslaved and fed.
Ignoring the fact that African American slaves were not only enslaved, but were whipped, beaten, tortured, and even murdered if they disobeyed their masters. Not to mention, there were laws saying that slaves that escaped to free states could be brought back to the South. One of the punishments was actually lynchings, and I would argue that some people would rather be killed than have to suffer the rest of their lives in slavery. Because let's be honest, who would want to live out the rest of their lives in torture, misery, and pain?
They both suck, though. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying they don't both suck. I have to reiterate because this guy likes to paint me as a racist for no reason. But yeah, some freaking small museum in a mall doesn't change that fact. Doesn't change the fact that blacks are the bigger victim in a lot of people's eyes. I can't believe you brought up that museum. These are some of the worst arguments I've ever heard.
No, wait, guess what? There are at least 2 museums dedicated to it, because there's another one in LA. A minority of people, what a joke.
Are you trying to claim that the majority of Americans have visited one or both of those museums? Because that would be wrong. The minority have visited those museums.
A lot of people visit these museums. You want to know how I know this? Because they're still running. If very few people went, these museums would no longer exist.
I'm sorry, but if that word hurts you, that happened 150 years ago. Slavery happened 150 years ago. Okay? Yes, your ancestors were enslaved. They weren't killed. Remember, they didn't go that extreme.
Okay, now I know you're just lying to my face. With the slave trade in general, poor living and working conditions introduced nightmarish health issues for slaves. Some forms of disease, like respiratory infections and worms, were unusually prevalent and fatal for the children involved.
God, you really like to focus on the minority of people. It's like I say a blanket statement that's like 98% of the time true, but then you're like, well, 2% of the time it ain't true.
Yes, sometimes slaves got diseased, but doesn't mean all of them got diseased, and they all had to deal with that. The majority of them didn't have to deal with that shit. And it's not in the best interest for the slave owners to have diseased slaves. It's not like this is something they wanted to happen. The slave owners did everything in their power to prevent this from happening.
Here's the thing about disease. Diseases could spread really easily due to the medication back then being far inferior to it is now. So yeah, a lot of black people died from disease back then.
If you guys like this episode, be sure to smash that like button. Also hit that bell button so you're notified of my next episode. Alright guys, I'll catch you on the next one. Laters.
No final thoughts? Final thoughts are something needed to wrap up all your thoughts together to help out whoever you're covering improve. Speaking of final thoughts, Dapperton, don't repeat your points a lot. It's really repetitive and really annoying since it drags out your video for longer than necessary. Also, the minority matters too. You're acting like it's no big deal because it didn't happen to a few people. Also, stand further away from your mic next time. Those mic peaks are annoying as fuck. Anyway, that's all for this commentary and thanks for watching.